You're Inside the Ropes, and I'm joined by my dear, close, personal friend, the one and only Mr. Jim Cornette. Jim, it's so good to talk to you again.
Oh, that's it. I'm used to the flowery introductions that I get from the great Brian Last on my wildly popular podcast, but I'll take that, Kenny. It was short and succinct and sweet, and just like you, short, succinct, and sweet. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. I feel like in the chaos of the world in 2022, speaking to you makes me feel better about things. That's where we are.
You know, that's a reflection on one or the other of us. Some people are going to go, wait a minute. Kenny McIntosh thinks, speaking of Jim Cornette, it pleases him, soothes him, cools him off. What maniac are you?
Wait, listen, I want to ask you, the first thing I want to talk to you about is obviously Vince McMahon is in the news everywhere. You've covered it on your podcast. Everyone can check out the clips on YouTube, or they can, listen to the podcast. But I mean, you've known Vince for 30 years, longer probably. Are you shocked that sort of, this is happening now? And do you think that even with the new stuff this week, do you think he's going to be able to survive it all?
Well, that's an essay question. Let's remind me of the survival part. Let's take the shock part first. I don't know if shocked is I am astonished, stunned, gobsmacked, bumfuzzled at some of the details. I'm not necessarily shocked at the activity, but just here's the thing. And I've said this on my podcast, but I'll say it to you also, just to make sure that there's somebody in the world that doesn't listen to my show, so they might hear it here. When I worked with and for Vince McMahon, it was like having a good relationship with the high school principal. You could laugh and joke with him, and in the car, and or meetings if we were in a more informal setting instead of a big production meeting or whatever, and you could tell jokes, and you'd get the attaboy every once in a while, or sometimes the look over the glasses down the nose, and you sit up straight and grab your tie a little bit. But you never got the impression or the feeling that you could just completely just fuck up and just do just ludicrous shit that you shouldn't be doing. And that I've heard stories about him in the 80s when they first started the expansion, the Hart Foundation giving him their finish in a fucking bar or a strip club or something. And I assume, well, he was younger then. He's matured a little bit. The steroid trials, he's trying to run a little straighter laced company here. I can understand, but I never got the impression from Vince. I mean, again, being in a room with men, and Russo was there sometimes as well. There would be comments made about the appearance of a girl, but we were kind of the ones to ass off all of his minions, and then he'd be the one to go, okay, and get us back to work. So he always had a little bit of a, straight posture with him, upright. And at the same time, he likes his fart jokes, and he likes the, bodily function humor and shit like that. But I said to you before we went on the air with this, if you had pointed a gun at me in 1996 and said, true or false, if you're wrong, I'm shooting you, Vince McMahon possesses a naked photo of himself, I'm safe, false. Now I realize I would have been mowed down in the street. So the amount of money paid out shocks and surprises me. The fact that he was actively, with employees, or now we've found out with some of the talent on the roster, at least in one or two cases, nobody's been named. I'm not trying to implicate it, finger anybody, so to speak. But if you'd have said to me, Vince would mess around with one of the divas on the roster, holy shit, not because he wouldn't have wanted to, but I just didn't think. And honestly, he gave us no reason at that time to believe that he would. He wasn't then. None of this shit was going on then. But when Brian Last has narrowed this down also, because he does more research than I do on things like this. when they went public with that stock and bought their own plane, it seems like all of a sudden Vince went from the owner of the company back to fucking college in the fraternity. And they're having plane rides from hell, and everybody's getting drunk and shaving cream and shaving their hair off. And meanwhile, Vince is having private meetings on the plane with certain of the divas, and Laurinaitis, of all people, is involved. There's another one. I know he's a smiling yes man, but I never knew he was a smiling ladies man. So it just, after they went public and bought their own plane and they're all worth billions of dollars, I think they've all lost their rabbit ass fucking minds. But no, so unless there's two Vince McMahons, unless he was twins all along and they did the Hebner deal and replaced Vince with his older brother Vince. Maybe that's where they got Ezekiel and Elias and Elrod from. I'm surprised at the behavior in his own company and that type of thing. I guess that's a long-winded answer. Can he survive it?
And the thing is, with the initial stuff came out, the allegations, he steps down as CEO, but he's still working in creative. And now this second batch of allegations that have come out, it seems odd that they can have him stay in this position because one of the shareholders has now quit. It just feels like in 2022 it's
the shareholders can't quit. They can only sell their shares. The board I know you misspoke. One of the board members quit.
He doesn't want to have anything to do.
Well, you know what? I guarantee you, I've sat in a room with Vince McMahon when he's heard things that other people are saying to him or about him or whatever, and I got a feeling he'd say, you know what? Every goddamn member of that board can quit because this is still mine. I don't give a fuck. He owns 80% of the stock, right? They got Class A and Class B. I'm not a Wall Street speculator. I own stocks, but I'm not the one that buys them and sells them because I don't do my own heart surgery either. But he's got the Class B shares have like 100 times or 10 times the voting power, and he's got 100 times more of them. And almost all of the power, the legitimate power, is locked up with either Vince or his family members or trust for the family, as the Wall Street Journal reported. And, I know that there's Securities and Exchange Commission rulings and publicly traded companies. I was reminded many times by Mr. John Laurinaitis, Jim, you can't yell at the wrestling trainees. We're a publicly traded company. Apparently you can fuck the paralegals and then pay them $1 million or $3 million to go away, but you cannot yell at the wrestlers at a publicly traded company. But that's the thing is, Laurinaitis is probably toast because now they found out they demoted him last time and promoted Triple H 10 years ago in talent relations because they signed another NDA on another payoff for John Laurinaitis' misconduct. And then 8 years later, Vince brings him back, puts him in the same position. He does the same goddamn thing. What the fuck?
I think it's like we're living in the Twilight Zone.
Yeah, isn't that the definition of insanity, to keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result? So the point is, Vince owns so much of that, and he's integrally wrapped up in the WWE and even in the WWE's business filings and statements, public filings, because they're a publicly traded company. An adverse condition listed is if we lost the services of Mr. McMahon, that would be dangerous to the company. So somebody who has been stooging to the board of directors and opened this can of beans, they want to get rid of Vince for whatever reason. We don't know because we don't know who it is. We can't evaluate their motive. But it's not only going to be awful hard to get rid of a motherfucker that owns that much of everything, but the WWE fan base, when he goes out in the arena, hey, it's Mr. McMahon. He's 80 years old. He's still fucking everybody. We love him. They don't want to see him. And then he comes out on TV because he's a smart motherfucker. The first time he came out, people thought, well, maybe he's saying farewell or, what? No, he's reminding people, I brought you this thing that you love. It's all because of me. Here, I'll introduce John Cena, the greatest star that can still walk in our fucking company. I brought him to you. And they don't give a shit that he was unfaithful to Linda because they think, well, Linda's the one that couldn't take a good Stone Cold Stunner. That's what the fans think. So he's going to win like he usually does. The war of public perception when it comes to his fans, and he doesn't give a shit what the people who don't watch his program or are not predisposed to be fond of Vince McMahon. He doesn't care what they think. So it could devalue the company, because if they try to run him off, it's going to devalue the stock price, because then they got no more Mr. McMahon, and that's what they've told all the stockholders is the thing that makes this thing gold. But if he stays, do the sponsors start getting antsy, or the TV partners, networks? It's a goddamn mess. And again, fuck. He's 76. This happened 2 years ago. Does anybody in the wrestling business know when to just go home and start fucking feeding the deer in the backyard? Only me.
Only you. Well, I mean,
only me.
One other kind of last thing about Vince I wanted to ask you was, you were around when they were essentially grooming Shane to maybe take over. Then
No. I was around when Shane was there. Shane was being given opportunities to have positions in the company. I never saw anything or heard anything that said he was actually at that point in the late 90s being groomed to take over. That process, he was never in creative. He had various functions and various jobs and various titles, and obviously it's Shane, but he wasn't being groomed right at that moment to take over the company, and that may be why that later on he eventually left and did his own thing. He wanted to. Shane always, and I like Shane better than probably all of the McMahons. He's a nice guy. He's a son of a weird billionaire, but he's a great guy and has a nice family. But he wanted to follow in his father's footsteps. I don't think he had a natural aptitude for promotion and for going out and finding things to make money on, but he didn't have a natural aptitude for the wrestling business itself and the way you think about it mentally. And I don't know that Stephanie ever really has either. I've been involved with Shane more than Stephanie. But Triple H did. And with you got Stephanie, you got Triple H. But here's another thing. They took the chairman of the board out of power while he's being investigated. Who's the new CEO? His daughter that just took a leave of absence from the company. So tell me that if Vince is still in charge of every goddamn thing.
When did it become a goddamn deal that you could just threaten these superstar wrestlers, we'll fire you and you'll be penniless? Well, they must not pay very fucking good if a guy can be fired and be penniless 6 weeks later. He's gonna lose his fucking house and his wife will divorce him because he has no job. He's a goddamn major network television star, and you're telling me he's gonna be broke because he goes 3 weeks without a fucking paycheck?